So we were sold, in terms of the vaccines, on the idea that you take it in order to sort of stop other people getting COVID and dying. Based upon the answer from this Pfizer official, that was a lie.
It was, but the thing is, Mark, it's as though people had their fingers in their ears and they just didn't want to hear it, because the fact is that information was in the trial data. Peter Doshi wrote an article about it in BMJ at the time. I looked at the trial data.
And Peter Doshi is he's a top medic, isn't he?
Yeah, and writes for
BMJ?
Writes for BMJ, yeah. So the thing is, the trials for the COVID vaccines were to test the reduction of severity of one or more symptoms. They didn't test reduction in hospitalisation, death or transmission. And yet we have been told that the vaccines would reduce or stop transmission. You know, President Biden said so in the US. Yeah. Sajid Javid here, when mandates were being rolled out for care home workers, literally said, get a job, get a jab or get a new job. And, you know, the whole premise behind that was that care home workers should be vaccinated in order to protect vulnerable and elderly people in care homes. But there was never any evidence, not any good hard evidence, that the vaccines would reduce transmission. They might do if they reduced your symptoms, if they made you less symptomatic, because therefore you would, you know, cough and sneeze less. But the fact that it was used in order to coerce people and incentivise people into being vaccinated was totally consistent with the whole unprecedented behavioural science approach to the vaccines and, in fact, to the whole pandemic.
Well, and the issue is that if this vaccine was 100% harmless, then perhaps it's worth the roll of the dice. Perhaps if it reduces transmission by a tiny amount, that's better than nothing, kind of marginal gain. But the bottom line is that we vaccinated millions of people around the world that statistically did not need the jab, including children and young people. And this is a vaccine that, while largely safe, is injuring and killing some people.
Well, every vaccine is going to have adverse effects. I'm going to just roll back slightly, because I think that harm is only one decision, only one factor in people's decisions. You've got to remember, some people refused the vaccine for religious grounds or reasons of conscience. Some people didn't want it because they'd had COVID already, so they assumed they had some good level of immunity. You know, people have lots of reasons not to want to be vaccinated, and they should all be respected, and they're all private. In fact, I'm just going to say something. It's interesting to be talking about the vaccine right here with you now, because the last time I talked about the vaccine on GB News, I was asked live on air if I was vaccinated.
On this channel?
And I'm afraid it was on this very channel, and I was so stunned and flummoxed to be asked that I started...
Well, I haven't asked for any of your medical details.
You haven't asked for any of my private,
but that's because you're a picture of health, so I'm not worried.
Medical details, well done. But, you know, we're in this very strange situation right now where, over in California, the home of entertainment, Marvel Comics has been sponsored by Pfizer, and they've produced a comic called Everyday Heroes, which is to encourage people to get their jabs and their boosters. Over on the other side of the country, in Florida, the Florida State Surgeon General has...
Was the chief medic in one of the great states of America.
Absolutely. Has produced some robust research to show that the risk of cardiac problems and cardiac death increases in men who are aged 18 to 39. So not only do they now not recommend it for under 17-year-olds, but they don't recommend the vaccine for 18 to 39-year-olds. So I think, you know, for a lot of us in the world, this is a really confusing time. You've got Disney and Marvel, this huge brand, saying, get vaccinated. And then, other side of the country, you've got a highly respected medic responsible for healthcare in a whole state saying, we don't recommend it for whole swathes of people. It's really hard for people to know what to do. Indeed,
and then we saw a study from the University of Oxford. Are you familiar with that particular educational outlet? Have you heard of the University of Oxford?
Yeah.
And the Lancet magazine?
Educational establishment,
right. So the University of Oxford, Lancet magazine, which is one of the most, you know, revered medical journals on the planet, published a study that suggested that you're over 40% more likely to get COVID if you've had a booster. Now, the bottom line is lots of people will continue to get boosted, and it's a free country and all of that. But you see these sorts of statistics, the myocarditis, the incidence of people being vaccinated and getting COVID. And now, countries like Denmark cancelling boosters for anyone under 50. You can't get the booster in Denmark now. You need a doctor's note if you're under 50. In Norway, it's under 65s. Is the vaccine house of cards beginning to tumble?
I think we're going to see some serious backpedalling. not least from people who were extremely hard on the refuseniks, as they called them. In this country, we can't forget Andrew Neil, Piers Morgan, Karen Brady, Anne McAvoy, lots of them with their big headlines saying it's time to punish the unvaccinated, etc. There's going to be a lot of backpedalling in those quarters. Also, I think the behavioural scientists and the health authorities who incentivised and pushed people to get vaccinated might have egg on their face in due course if people don't believe in the efficacy as much anymore. You know, if it doesn't live up to the promises at the least, and of course every adverse effect is going to worry people. I think Marvel and Disney have been astonishingly brave with their brand, to be honest.
Oh, yes.
To sell their superheroes to Pfizer to presumably make money, because I think every adverse event is going to puncture the allure of the superheroes like a needle through a cape.
A day of reckoning is coming, isn't it?
Perhaps.
Yeah,
I think it already has come for trust in health authorities. That day of reckoning is here.